Welcome to The Problem on Lockwood and Co podcast. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alan.
And today we are talking about all of part 6. I don't have to remember what part of the part we're on. Oh yeah.
An unexpected visitor.
Yes. The finale, the last 2 chapters of book 4.
El Creepo Shadow. So this is the final creeper in the book, is the unexpected visitor. Who do you think the visitor... I think there's an obvious answer to that. Is there any like twisty literary, way too smart answer to that?
I mean, the answer is Marissa, right? Not Penelope.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Because they've visited or been visited by, well, I guess they visited Penelope a bunch during this book. So then to have it be revealed that it's Marissa.
Mm-hmm.
That is, to me, that's the unexpected part. Because it's not too unexpected that they bookend the story with another.
Talking to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another interview with Fitz. Yeah. I think that's right. I think that's what makes it unexpected. Yeah. It's unexpected in ironic way. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so chapter 28, Deepak investigates the explosion and Barnes protects Lockwood and Co. Sort of.
Kind of.
And the chapter art is, I don't know, man. The landscape with some smoke.
Yeah, it's like you're looking out the hotel, I think, at the facility still on fire. That's how it seems to me.
I thought maybe it was them like on the train on the way out.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know. It's just the landscape. Question mark.
Shit's still on fire.
Yep. And we sort of open up the chapter with the group sitting around at the inn.
Mm-hmm.
They made it. They're back.
Lucy does like a thing that she does a bunch of times when there's like a big narrative break, and it's like, for more than 1,000 years. Probably it's like, okay, Lucy, why are we doing this?
She does like to be over dramatic in her narrative voice.
Yeah. But yeah, there's basically, they're being invaded by the government,
by
Deepak.
And this is the most exciting thing that has happened in the area since the Vikings.
Right, yeah.
Is what the whole from for 1,000 years thing. But like,
yeah, they're not doing much though.
Yeah, they're not doing. Newspapers have already printed stuff. The Rotwell incident is out and about in the public. Nobody's allowed in or out of what's going on over there, and they're just like, that's fine with us. We just want to rest.
Yeah. Especially because Lucy and Lockwood are still feeling kind of messed up from their journey on the other side. Yeah. They're just all taking it easy. Kipps is real worried about, like, they're going to get rounded up. They must know about us. He feels real guilty about breaking the rules, I think. And Lockwood and Holly are just playing cards, and he's, like, not worried about it.
Or he feels bad that they left witnesses alive.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Because the only person that they got rid of was Steve Rotwell, and other people did see 5 crazy potential teenagers chucking bombs at them and stuff. One thing that I did want to point out that is so stupid, like I'm being stupid, when Lucy is describing what's happening, she says that most of the facility had been destroyed, and what areas remained had been quickly sealed off from all but the most specialized operatives. And I just underlined that and put spin-off. Who are these people? What makes them specialized operatives? Do they work for Deepak? Do they work for an agency? I want to know. Are they young people who can see the ghosts, or are they adults with delusions of grandeur? I don't know.
It's like the CSI spinoff in this world or something like that. NICU. That's a funny idea.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I just, these people are never mentioned before or after, and I want to know more.
They're probably adults. They're like, we're very special. We only work in the daytime.
They're probably the Monsters Inc. guy from the people from the TV show. Yeah,
exactly. We only work in these suits. They're ghost proof. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, agents aren't allowed them, though. Yeah, then they're all just sort of sitting around chatting about everything that's happened.
Holly does point out, like, shouldn't we tell Deeprak what happened? I love the way that, like, Lucy looks at her while she's saying this and, like, thinks about her. Mm-hmm. That she's, like, all kind of pretty much back to being her pristine self. But she keeps thinking about how badass Holly was in the facility while she was, like, shooting guns at people and throwing bombs and stuff like that. And she feels affectionate about it.
Yeah, the gun-toting, wild-haired mad woman of the night before was in there somewhere. It's great. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that they really know each other now and have good communication.
Yeah, and she's not, like, secretly upset that Holly looks okay the day after or something like that. She's, like, has a real affection for who she is.
Yeah, and she knows that she's, like, a real person now and not like a caricature, which is kind of how Lucy felt about her in book 3.
It's great to see that evolution. Yeah.
Yes.
I do think it's weird because Lockwood's like, what are we going to tell Barnes? He's never liked us. Why would he believe us? And when they were in the facility, Lockwood was like, this isn't good enough. We're going to have to, if we're going to go to Deeprak, we got to get more evidence. It, like, now he doesn't want to do it. So I don't really understand the change in motivation here.
I do. Or at least it makes sense to me. When they were first in the facility, he wanted more evidence to be able to shut the facility down. Mm-hmm. Have Deeprak come in and shut it all down. Because they knew something happening in there was causing all the hauntings up at Alfred Castle, right? Like, obviously, it had to be.
They knew there was a cluster for sure. Just like all the evidence just showed them that.
Yeah. And also, I think that they found the weapons that were used to the terrorist attack.
Mm-hmm.
So they obviously wanted justice for that. But then they kind of found more than they were expecting, right? And walked with ghosts on the other side.
Yeah.
And I think now that which is bigger than they were expecting to find, right? They just wanted evidence to bring criminals to justice. Not to, like, oh, now maybe we know how the problem exists?
Right, yeah. So, like, they turned over some kind of cosmic stone and they're like, Barnes will never believe this. This is too crazy.
Yeah, and also the facility's already being shut down. Like, mission accomplished. So there's really no need to bring it all to Barnes. Except if they think that Deeprak can bring an end to Fitz. They're not thinking of it in those terms. That's just me. But you know what I mean? They don't think Deeprak can do anything with this information.
Yeah, I think they definitely think that in the next book. And they're right to think that. Yeah, it's just weird to me how there was, like, it felt like a shift in motivation. But I get what you're saying, that it was just much, much bigger than he could have ever imagined. And now he's just like, what's the point? What can we say that would convince him? Like, I told him we didn't mean to burn that lady's house down and he didn't believe me. He's not going to believe this.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
And also, like I said, they wanted to shut the place down, and that they did get. Deeprak is there to shut it down and to expose that they were behind the terrorist threat attack thingy at the parade.
And they killed Rotwell, so, like, that also feels like problem
Lucy killed
solved.
Rotwell, yep.
And Lucy murdered Rotwell, yeah.
Which never comes up. It's fine. I do like this image of, they kind of flash back to Lucy and Lockwood telling the group everything that happened to them. And we get this description of George, who, of course, like, this must be blowing his mind. And it just says, even George had not said much, though his glasses gleamed as he stared long into the fire. Fascinating, he said over and over. And for me, I picture him as, like, an anime guy with his glasses glowing.
Yeah, me
know?
too. Where they turn white. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just a really funny image in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when the emotion builds up too high and it makes your glasses glow.
Yeah.
Everybody who owns glasses knows about that problem.
Or maybe just the Japanese? I don't know. It seems to be an anime thing.
Yeah. You know what's funny is that it's only in the North American version that it says over and over.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why they added that.
I assumed the big change in this one was the amount of times they mentioned the word fries.
Yeah. Yeah. There's all kinds of little changes here and there, and especially in these two chapters. I thought it was weird. That was one of the ones I was like, why? Okay. But it does give you a certain feeling about him that I think is the right feeling, that he's just really chewing on this, and it seems like, you know, like the waters are running deep with him right now.
Sure, but that's like, to me, that's a more egregious change than Celsius to Fahrenheit or chips to fries or whatever, because that's
for sure
changing the narrative.
Yeah.
Like
it gives you a different feel about George. Yeah.
In an incredibly small way that ultimately doesn't really matter, but it's still just like, who okayed that? Who? Why? What?
Yeah, that's why I noticed it. I was like, huh, who gets to do that? That's so weird. But I don't know how much that happens anyway. You know, like how often is it not just Stroud, you know, making choices? Is it some editor dipping in there and changing this or that?
Like maybe
I just don't know.
Like maybe the two different editors got the original manuscript at the same time and it was taken out of the British one but left in the American one. Yeah.
Or I'm just wrong and it is in the English edition in like later editions, but when they did the audiobook, it wasn't in that version, because that happens too. So like sometimes changes are made after everything is wrapped up, and different editions have little different. Sometimes the author goes back and changes things a little bit here and there based on feedback. So,
or like Tolkien, when you change your whole
George Lucas, whatever. Yeah.
Well, George, I mean, I wasn't talking about movies, but I guess it's the same thing.
Yeah. But anyway, that's one of the weird things about the Kindle edition is you always have the latest version, and so sometimes it's just not the same. So maybe I'm wrong that it's only the North American, but it wasn't in the audiobook, so I thought that was a little weird.
We then get like confirmation that Skull came back with them and has been spending time in the storage cupboard that they cleared a ghost out of and now put a ghost back in, which
the pea closet. Yeah,
kind of funny. And I think it's later that it comes up, but I do love the image of Kipps sleeping in there with Skull.
Yeah.
I assume Skull is like a nice little nightlight for him.
I'm sure he glows as brightly as possible when Kipps is in there.
But also, like, I've only seen one fan art of that, and I think that is a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there
should be more.
That is ripe for opportunity, people. Does Kipps wake up hugging Skull? Like, I need to know.
That would be great. You'd be like, oh, I did it again. Why am I wrapped around this thing?
It's like a perfect only one bed scenario for Kipps and Skull.
Right, yeah.
But yeah.
I wonder if he tries to annoy Kipps by glowing brightly, and then Kipps just takes the goggles off and can't see it, and it's like, ha ha.
Exactly. It's good. But anyways, Skull and Lucy have a nice conversation where, you know, it's very easy to tell that Lucy is happy to have Skull back, but doesn't actually want to tell him that she missed him or anything like that.
Yeah. There's a really good point where he says to her, we both inhabit two worlds. Yes. You sense the other one all the time. You've always had glimpses of it all your days, and now you've actually been there. So it's talking about like the way that she's a liminal character between life and death. This is why she's the main character, you know, why she's so important to the story of the problem, because she's the only person who could kind of stand in that space and put all the pieces together, right? Because she can see the whole thing. And so like for Skull to symbolically, like I'm always saying, be a part of her, he's like the dead part, she's like the living part. But it's what's cool about that, and what feels like kind of yin yang to me, you know how there's like the dot in the yin yang of each other, like Skull very much is like wants to be in the living world, even though he's dead. And Lucy has this pull towards death, even though she's alive. And so they like kind of balance each other out to me. And it's so good to have them back together. They feel complete.
Yes, I agree with everything you just said. And I really, really love, well, I love that she thanks him for saving them on the other side when he pointed out when they were lost and couldn't find the chain. And he never even quite like acknowledges it, which I love. He just kind of says, you got back, or whatever it is. I am literally staring at the page and I can't find it, so it doesn't matter. But it's good. And then I just love that even after all of that, you know, we're caught between life and death, you know, it's you and me. At the end of it, Lucy's like, you seem to be forgetting about Lockwood. And of course, I love Skull's Lockwood Schmockwood. That's great.
He's more drawn to death than either of us. That's really interesting.
Exactly. Too. Like, I know it wouldn't work for the story, but I do wish Lockwood and Skull got to communicate more than they do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be some interesting conversations.
I do love how he's like, it's you and me. And he's kind of right. Like, her journey really is with Skull, and he is so necessary to who she has to be for the story. But Lockwood is like, I don't know, it feels like this reaching out towards a real life, her connection to Lockwood, in a way that reaching out to Skull, while it completes her, would not. It's that life that she had at the beginning of this book, and it's a really incomplete, hollow life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important that she did explore it, though.
Yeah. She needed to. Yeah.
But it is interesting how, like you said, Lucy kind of pulls Skull towards life, and Skull kind of pulls Lucy towards death. But then Lockwood and Lucy kind of pull each other towards life.
Yeah, when they're together, yeah. They save each other. They want to be there for each other. Yeah.
So this is why I wish Lockwood and Skull had more of a dynamic. Because, like, all three of them, it would be interesting where they get pulled, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Probably they would all die, but... and that's why it's not that. But it would be interesting. Anyway, so then Lucy gets some potatoes to go make lunch, and Skull is really upset that they're not, you know, starting to make plans for their own agency. Carlyle and Skull. God, I want that on a t-shirt.
He's like, I'll even let you have the name first.
Yeah.
He's being magnanimous. That's cute. But yeah, it kind of skips a little bit to after lunch, and then a car pulls up with Inspector Barnes.
Everyone's favorite.
Yeah.
And really, I do love this bit, because in their previous conversation, they did decide that they would have to tell Barnes because of just how big everything is.
Mm-hmm.
And then he pulls out and he starts sort of talking to them just about what they're doing there. And they're like, yeah, we were cleaning out the city. And is it Skinner here who speaks for them? And like, well, at one point
they're
does.
Little heroes.
Yeah.
He's so proud of them.
And then Barnes gets rid of the kid.
Danny.
Yeah. And then he's like, look, you know nothing. You weren't there. You will tell me nothing. You two, of course, know nothing about it, because you were over here, doing things here. And
This is such a great inversion. It's so good.
Yeah, that they were trying to tell him, and he was like, no, tell me nothing. I love this proof that Barnes has a soul.
Yeah, and a brain.
And a brain, yeah. Yeah, that's fair. And he even says, like even if agents are very annoying, it is our job to protect them, so shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
And continue keeping quiet.
Yeah, he's really protecting them from the machine, from the whole thing. And I think you could read his, previous, like, trying to shut Lockwood and Co down as a bizarre version of that, to be like, you're a small agency, you can't really handle this work, so I'm going to shut you down so you never, get destroyed by the work.
It's harder to read that in the book, but I do think the show played that angle up quite a lot.
Yeah. He did it in kind of a clueless and bad way in the show too. Like scaring the shit out of Lucy.
Yeah, he gets, but but I don't know. I still got that more from him in the show than in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they couldn't get rid of all of Barnes' idiocy in the show, even though they made him so much cooler.
He is a lot. Yeah, he's a lot cooler. But it's great. I love how all of this is kind of turned on its head, especially from previous books where Barnes is having to pry facts out of them and they hide things from him. And it's all just turned on its head here. It's a really delightful thing to have happen in the book. And it's heartwarming. It feels like he's drawn much, much closer to Lockwood and Co. Because now there's no getting rid of them. There's no shutting them down.
Yeah.
This is the only way that he can really find to protect them in this situation. And it's, again, just like everything else with this book, I think it's unsaid. And he's literally telling them not to say things.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's wherein their safety lies. And also, like, it's not spelling it out for you in the book. It's trusting that you, the reader, are going to understand that he's not doing this because he's trying to, like, not give them the credit or be mean to them. This is actually the nicest thing that he could do.
Yes. I mean, I think it's a little spelled out, but...
Yeah, there's not a moment where, like, Holly's like, why would he ever tell us to be quiet?
That's fair.
And then,
yes,
like, Lockwood explains, well, you see, Holly.
Yes, okay. There's nothing like that. That's fair. That would have been bad.
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing that might happen, in another middle grade kind of book. But I don't think it's holding your hand in that way. It's letting you get it.
On a complete tangent, I don't know why I just thought of this. But if anybody out there, and Alan, I know you, or maybe I haven't read them. I don't remember. But Stroud's current series.
Oh, yeah, I read the first one.
Yeah, the Brown and the Notorious.
Scarlet and Brown?
Scarlet and Brown. There we go.
Yeah.
Those books confuse me because they are middle grade books. But I have absolutely no idea how old the protagonists are. They could be in their 20s.
That's true.
I don't know.
I guess I imagine them as teens, but I don't know if it says. That world is so different. It feels like you in that world, by the time you're a teenager, you would have to grow up a lot.
Oh, I agree, but like it never says. It never gives any indication other than, like, we know one of the characters had some bad things happen to her family like a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be anything. That could be anytime. And we know that, like, they both have some histories. Like, meaning that, like, one of them has a notorious reputation, which should have taken some years to... I'm so confused about how old those characters are. And I would like Stroud, in book 3, to tell me.
You just have a birthday for somebody or be like...
something, please.
It's my 16th year.
Like, I want that more than finding out what the fuck's going on. Because actually, that, I get. That makes total sense. It's not like the characters are very original in that story, but I don't think the setting is all that original.
Mm-hmm.
It's the chrysalids with zombies,
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. That's an elevator pitch.
Not that, I mean, I really enjoy those books, so I don't mean that as a criticism.
I don't think that's a bad comparison, though, to be like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, back to the book we're actually reading here.
Mm-hmm.
They stay in Oldbury Castle for a couple more nights, and then they get a nice welcome committee trailing them to the train on their journey home. They get some gifts of root vegetables, which I don't even think that's funny. I think that is yes. If anybody is ever, like, seeing me off in a hero capacity, well, 1, I would hate that. But 2, that's what I want. I want potatoes. And maybe some carrots. Like, that's... Yes, please. Root vegetables all the way.
Yeah, that's like it's like the town specialty, right? It's like the thing that they do. So they're like, here is our treasure of our town. It's very quaint. It's
some
cute.
Parsnips. Amazing. Delicious. I'll take them.
There
all.
is like a moment here in the final paragraph that I think is actually the inspiration for the picture. It says the column of smoke above the eastern hills had long since drifted away. So maybe not. Maybe I'm totally wrong. On the wind. Nevertheless, a hint of it hung in the air. And this line made me think of how the book started with the Clerkenwell furnaces and, like how they were misused and how they failed to burn the sources. But now Lockwood and Co. turned the Institute into a furnace like
Burned
it's
it
kind
all.
of justice. Yeah,
Yeah.
and burned all those sources up. So it's just neat how that kind of comes back around in a weird way, because it was like talking about how the furnaces burn all the soot. It's supposed to go out over the river, but it goes out over where people live. And this is kind of going out over where people live. So it just felt linked to me.
Oh, and also, I do think that sounds like what the chapter art is, which means I was right. Landscape from the train.
Yeah.
Go me. I'm getting good at this.
It's only 4 books.
Yep.
4 books. Chapter 29, where Penelope Fitz arrives at Portland Row for tea and a hostile takeover.
Everyone's favorite. Tea and hostility.
Yeah.
The chapter art is a sandwich, which was very obvious, but I didn't remember when I started this chapter how important the sandwich was going to be.
Yeah.
And how it kind of is a metaphor.
For real.
And now I look at it and I'm like, the most important sandwich of all time. Jeez.
Oh, it's so sad. It's like seeing the cake from the previous book in the last chapter.
Yes. Yeah, we end with food that George doesn't get to enjoy again.
Again.
Oh,
yeah.
man. Poor George.
You see a little bit of the tablecloth too, which is neat.
Yeah.
Can't really read it, but it's kind of perfect.
The chapter starts off with a newspaper article, which I think I've mentioned before I hate and always skip them. So
I always think they're so brilliant and really well done. I love that.
It was I had to force myself to read through it all for the podcast.
This one's longer.
I know.
I do love that it's like part of the formula of the books now.
I get it, but like you can just say, yeah, it was in the newspapers and this is the wrong information. The news, like it could be 2 sentences. It doesn't have to be 2 pages. What is happening?
It's always typed out different. Like it's in bold. It's I love it. I love everything about it.
It's a waste of time is what it is.
In this, so if we think back to the first book, the press release in that one hides the fact that, like the whole manor, whatever that place was called, I can't think of it now, the iron guy owned was like,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean,
secret lab,
but it's gonna bother
Fairfax.
me.
I can't think of the name of the place. Coombe Carey.
Coombe Carey, yes, thank you.
So Coombe Carey Hall was like a secret research facility, and he murdered that girl, and all of that stuff is covered up in the news article. And Lockwood and Co gets full credit for like solving a case and clearing out Coombe Carey and blah, 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 blah. So right away, like in the first book, things are starting to be covered up. And each successive book, Lockwood and Co.'s kind of role in the whole thing is becoming smaller and smaller, to the point where in this one, they don't exist at all.
Right.
It's just, it just talks about like, can you believe that this Rotwell facility was like, had stuff that was behind the attack on Mrs. Fitz's life at the parade and blah, 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 blah.
It's almost like it's not even dealing with things that happened in this book.
Right. Yeah. So I love that we've just gotten to the point where like Lockwood and Co doesn't get credit for the thing that they did, but Lockwood doesn't even care, because like this is like a very noir hard-boiled trope, because like when you solve the case as the hard-boiled detective, a lot of times you don't even get paid and nobody says thank you. You did it, as the detective because you care about justice, because you have like your own code, because you want the world to be a certain way. And it's like this kind of existentialism, right? And like Lockwood did this to satisfy his own curiosity. That's why he ran out there to like solve the case, see what was going on. And what happened. And like it's not about the headlines. It's not that he wouldn't love the headlines, but like he doesn't need them as much as he did in the first book, I think.
I also think he's matured enough to a point where understands that not having attention means you can do more. Getting in under the radar and having the right connections and all that sort of thing, that you can help people more, you can get more done when everyone's eyes are not on you.
Mm-hmm. He even says, I suppose we should be happy that he glossed over our part in the affair. So that's not Lockwood from book 1. So like there's been evolution, which I love. I don't want to read about, like episodic story where the characters reset every book. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I love the evolution.
And then we get a little bit of the team being back together. Lucy has permanently moved back into her attic bedroom, and the Skull is back to spending most of his time on the windowsill. I almost said windshield.
They live in a trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything's sort of back to normal, except everything's different. And it's great.
It's great. It's great. Yeah.
Oh, and it's important that they've brought Skull downstairs because they're celebrating their success and the team being back together. That Skull is downstairs with them celebrating. That is important.
It like leers at Holly, so she like throws a dish towel over it, which
he's been banished to a corner, but he is there.
Yeah. It's that's how Skull exists in my mind, is in the kitchen with a tea towel over him.
But like only half over him.
Yeah, he's like peeking out with one eye.
Yeah. I do picture him a lot up on Lucy's windowsill, though, like making faces at the neighbor kids.
That's very funny.
I don't know,
the toddler thing.
I love that.
Very funny.
I think that's just how he spends his days, you know. But yeah, the kitchen with the tea towel over him is good too. Anyways, Lockwood gives a bit of a toast, welcoming Lucy back, and then they have a moment where they just stare at each other for a while, and then George is George.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Kipps is there too.
Yes, of course. Kipps is not officially part of the team. At least Kipps wouldn't say he's officially part of the team. And I don't know that George would either, but everyone else is pretty much on board with Kipps being officially part of the team.
Well, Kipps says it would be a fate worse than being whipped naked across Wimbledon Common to join Lockwood and Co. So he's still trying to be too cool.
Yeah, but he is there.
Yeah.
Like, he says that while in the kitchen at Portland Row.
Right. He's got a mug of tea. He's there for and this is how we've ended like every book, right? With like a little feast in the kitchen, the warm little group being together. So it feels very like the first time you read this book, you're like, ah, yes, the ending. Cozy, wonderful. It's all good. And then you're like, why are there so many more pages? What's going to happen? Oh,
they do make some really bad George jokes here, but whatever. Let's glaze past that.
Yeah, there's a line here that like, this is what I think of from this book and like really informed how I interpreted like the arc of all the characters in the book. So Lockwood, thanks Lucy, and it makes Lucy blush and everything. And George is like, oh, awkward. But then Lockwood says, the truth is we all rely on each other. Take any one of us away and we're all weakened. Together, there's nothing we can't do. And they have the toast to that. And I really do think that's what this book is about, they were like thrown together in the other books, and what it was like chance, maybe fate, it was luck, but this is choosing. And it's a big part of what adulthood is, that after you've messed things up, if you want to make things right, it's really about a choice and not about just we randomly met one day and trying to work that out. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does, absolutely. Yeah. And it's also very akin to like when you're finally done high school and suddenly you're not like legally obligated to hang out with your friends every day. So you have to you have to choose to hang out.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why some friendships just disappear after high school. And it's not anything bad. It's just, I guess, it just is what it is.
But I think they know what it means to not have each other. And so there's a really conscious choice to be together. And I think Lockwood says it perfectly, that they are less without each other. They need each other.
Yeah.
And it's true.
I agree. We have some, a talk about, like, because Lucy says that it's a pity she lost the other cloak. And Lockwood does mention, like, we don't know what is in those other boxes. There might be more. Which I'm glad that got stuck in there, just so that things didn't come out of nowhere in the next book. I hate when things come out of nowhere.
Right.
And eventually they're all just sort of chatting about whether or not anybody saw Lucy and Lockwood when they were on the other side, but like any living person did, the way that they saw the creeping shadow. And I am sad that we don't ever get an answer to that, but more importantly, the doorbell rings. And Holly goes to get it, and in walks Penelope Fitz and Sir Rupert Gale. Everyone's favorite people.
Unexpected visitors.
They all kind of scramble to make them comfortable because very important people and all that, and they give them some tea.
This feels like such an invasion. Even the first time I read it, I was like, what is she doing in their kitchen? Like,
yeah, because she doesn't want to go into the living room and sit or anything like that.
Right.
She's like, no, let's just hang out in the kitchen. And basically, I mean, there's a whole conversation here, but basically it boils down to, I know, shut up about it. You know, you have to do what I say.
Well, she reveals that she's going to absorb the Rotwell business.
Well, that was in the newspaper article that Deepak suggested it.
She's very proud of the whole thing, and she chalks it up to them. So it's really interesting to, like, she puts the responsibility on them. Like, oh, you destroyed one of the greatest, you know, psychical investigation agencies ever and handed it to me. So thank you so much for that. And it gives you like a really bad feeling about the course of this conversation when she does that.
And then she has this exchange with Lockwood where he says, you're requesting that we forget anything we may or may not have seen. And she says, requesting isn't the word I would have chosen, but yes. And then she goes on to say, for 50 years, we have been at war with supernatural forces. Tampering with them or seeking to turn them to personal gain, as the foolish Rotwell did, is a recipe for spiritual disaster. The mysteries of death are sacrosanct and must not be explored. Which is rich.
No one can
her.
Look into things. Yeah.
And I wrote down that this was very Oz of her, meaning the wizard.
Yeah.
Like, don't look behind the curtain. What are you doing?
What curtain?
Yeah.
It's not, Yeah, this is, what is it? Girl boss, gaslight, gatekeep. I mean, that's what's happening here.
Exactly. That's mine. Keep your paws off. I'm the only one.
It's all about, every time they've seen her, it's been power. And this feels like the most power play, to invade their space and then tell them how they're going to be and what they should do. And like, I wouldn't say it's a suggestion. It's more like an order, right?
Yeah.
She acts like she's doing everyone a favor with everything that she's doing. I love how Lockwood like slowly comes out of this whole thing. This is like, I don't know what you're talking about with the Institute. We just happen to be in the town. And she's like, please shut up. Stop being an idiot. That's not true. We all know it.
And then just to go back on what I said about Lockwood maturing and realizing he can do more without people's attention, he does say, we reject your request or order or whatever it is. Forgive me, but we're not part of your organization. You can't waltz into our kitchen and tell us what to do. And she's like, yes, I can. Actually, I can do whatever I want.
It feels so good when he says that. And it's like, I love that. So I guess I've been saying the whole book, like, they're not saying things out loud, but a lot of things in this conversation feel like we're really saying all the unsaid things.
Sure, but
to
like
each
if he
other's
had
faces.
just shut up, it would have been better.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to say what you're going to do to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he really does need to. It's true. It's childish to like thumb your nose at authority and be like, you can't tell me what to do.
Because the only thing she can say to that is, yes, I can. And it's true. Anyways, we go on. Rupert threatens them a whole bunch.
He does the thing. What was it? Like Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction when he eats that guy's cheeseburger.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like when he reaches down and takes George's sandwich and takes a huge bite out of it and says how for some people there will be consequences, but for others there will be no consequences at all. That's pretty good.
So then just because like he hasn't earned, like he's not evil enough. He's just a henchman. You know, that's what I'm saying. He's a henchman and he has delusions of grandeur and it bothers me and I want him dead. Anyways, Fitz goes on to talk about what they are and are not going to do and basically just says, do more small things like you used to do. Stop getting involved in the big picture.
She like specifically gestures at George's map when she's talking about that. Like, don't go above your intellectual station.
And she's been in there for like 10 minutes. Like, maybe taking a glance at that map, which means he is onto something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because she has not had a chance to really, like, examine the map, which is huge. Like, why? That's her being stupid. Why would she even mention it? Whatever. It doesn't matter.
I know. That's what I thought, too. I was like, way to tip your hand to be like, you will stop doing this and this. And it's like, oh, these are all the things we will never stop doing then.
Yep. And then basically she puts all of them down and says that they suck, but like in a rich lady way. And then Lucy just sort of jumps in and says, no, you know nothing about us. Leave everyone alone. And then...
well, she does that specifically.
For
it's
Holly,
very sweet.
yes.
For Holly, yeah, because she's like, oh, you're the perfect little secretary, but you're a little coward. And you like think back to Holly, like shooting those dudes and throwing bombs, and like Holly's a badass, and Lucy's not putting up with it. She's like, shut up. You don't know anything.
I love their friendship.
It's beautiful. It's such a nice little, it's completely upside down from the previous book. It's great. And it feels really earned.
Yes. But then Fitz sort of turns to Lucy and, you know, is like really upset that Lucy didn't take her up on her offer the other week. They could have done great things together.
Yep.
And then she gets angry at Kipps. Well, not angry, I don't think. She's staying very composed. But then she decides to tear Kipps apart, including saying that, you know, he'll never see his pension, which is wild.
I know, illegal. That's crazy. Yeah.
And his reputation will be destroyed, and nobody will ever hire him. And Lockwood is immediately like, don't worry, you can work for us.
You'll never work in this town again. And Lockwood's like, it's okay, man.
And she even mentions...
You could work at this terrible place that you hate.
She mentions that he's been using the goggles, which is wild. Which, like, that must mean...
It feels like she knows everything.
It feels like she knows everything, but I'm, like, trying to figure out how she knows that Kip specifically was using the goggles. Either means that one of her henchmen was involved in questioning the Fitz people from the Institute.
Or the Rotwell people?
Or the Rotwell people, yes. Or that she sent a henchman up to Ulver Castle to talk to them, which is an attention to detail.
Yeah. She was keeping an eye on them one way or another. I think definitely, because they talk specifically about, like, people in the facility saw 5 teenager intruders in there and blah, 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 blah. So probably, you know, descriptions of them and being like, the tall one with the turtleneck had goggles on. It made him look like a frog. It was really weird.
I mean,
I'll never forget that.
It can't be that specific because Barnes wouldn't have been able to bury that it was them.
Yeah.
But, like, there must have been something. That's why I think maybe she sent someone to go question the town.
Mm-hmm.
Because they would have seen Kipps with his goggles and stuff. And it would be so easy to go and see, you know, if everything's all right for them now. And under the pretext of checking up on them, the people there would answer whatever questions they had.
Probably, like, in a proud way, too. And be like, oh, those guys are great.
Exactly.
Except the one guy. He has these weird glasses. But, you know, like everybody else, pretty cool.
Anyways, Fitz and Gale leave eventually after, you know, all these threats and stuff. And then they have a moment where everyone's just sort of sitting there quietly. And then Lockwood laughs. And that kind of brings them all back to themselves. So that was a good moment for him. And then they vote on not being little obedient agents. And that they want to keep doing what they do. And figure out what the heck's going on. And why she felt the need to come threaten them.
Yeah, even Kipps, the Kipps vote is funny.
Yeah.
Where he does the thing where he puts his hand up like he's going to scratch the back of his head because he's still uncomfortable with breaking the rules.
Or with being a part of Lockwood and Co. Or both.
Yeah, both. But it's very punk rock, this whole like...
Yeah.
Okay, so they're the center of the investigations now, right? And we're not going to care about her henchmen intimidating us. They're going to take them down.
Yep. Down with Fitz. So a couple minutes after that, Lucy is washing their dishes, which is great. I don't think we've ever seen her do that before in the books.
And certainly not in the beginning of this book. She would not be doing this kind of work, right? That's because she's with her family that she's, you know how she wouldn't clean up and all of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good. And then Skull starts talking to her about, who was that? Who just came in? And we're going to get to the important part of this conversation. But first, I just want to mention that a little later on, she says that everyone is still around.
Mm-hmm.
She's not alone in the room, but nobody questions her, which means they all just are used to Lucy talking to herself. Which I think is great. Like,
I imagine that it's like the show when Skull talks in the show, each syllable makes him light up a little bit and then it goes dim. You know what I mean? Like, they'd be like, oh, he's talking.
Right. But imagine you're just in a kitchen cleaning up, somebody's washing the dishes, and then they just say Penelope Fitz.
Penelope Fitz. Yeah.
After you just had that whole interaction. And then a pause, and then they're explaining who Penelope Fitz is. Like,
right.
It's weird to think of, but I love it. And I love that they all just continue on with what they're doing, because that's just Lucy.
Yeah, but he's very cryptic about the whole thing. He's like, she's like, why are you asking? And he's like, no reason. How old is she, would you say? I don't know. She's like, what are you talking about?
Yes, and then he comes around in his Skull way of saying Marissa Fitz, and then she's just like, we're talking about Penelope. And he's like, which I love. And then Skull reminds us that he met Marissa once, spoke with her some time ago, and she put him in the jar that he's in. And then he says it's weird to see her standing there again. And after, like, being cagey about it for a bit, he's just like, no, that was Marissa. That is not Penelope. That is the same 80-year-old woman, but she looks like she's 30.
Right. So he recognizes her literally in some way. If it's weird that he's asking about her age and stuff, like, what does he see? Is he seeing her spirit, her soul? Like, I don't know how people appear to him.
I don't know how people appear to him, but they do talk about that in book 5, that he recognized, like, it wasn't her face that he recognized. It was something else in her essence. Because
when he talks about how Lucy appears to him, she's like a light, a beacon. And so, yeah, I imagine it's something like that with Marissa. Yeah, but Marissa is Penelope. So, which makes me, like the first time I read this, and I immediately have like a Ratatouille moment, like when he eats the thing and like he becomes a small child. I went right back to when we were talking about the TV show, and there's that whole Penelope pulls Lucy aside at the Fitz ball and is like, has the picture of Marissa behind her and is like, you should come work with me and I'm a great listener. Yeah. And I was explaining to you how that's really about her mother issues and about how, like it's symbolic of all these things. And she sees her mother and Lucy and she's threatened by her and her psychology and blah, 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 blah. And you said nothing. Heroically.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I said we'll talk about that later. Or something to that effect. Or we'll revisit this when you finish the books.
Right.
But I do really love that scene in the show and the line that she ends with of the, I'm a real good listener. That's so good. This whole scene actually here in the kitchen, even more than maybe not more than the other side, but it's one of the ones that I would be most excited to see in a TV show.
Oh, yeah. This is, chewing scenery for the villain. This is great.
It's great. And also just because the show's a little bit more like aged up, I guess. So they could write this scene a little bit more sophisticated. And they've set up the Lucy and Penelope, Marissa, whatever.
Connection.
Dynamic a little differently in the show. So I would just really, really love to see how it plays out between that version of them.
Yeah, totally.
I think it would be a really great scene. Too bad no one's ever going to do it.
Please make the show. Just announce someone buy it. I don't understand it, but that's so depressing. But so this is the huge, each one of the books has like a big twist. And this is the huge twist at this that like really sends you backwards through the entire story, being like, wait a minute. She was the bad guy all along. We thought she was the hero. She's the hero of the past story. Like Lucy is the next Marissa Fitz. She was her hero, and now it seems like she's the villain, and we're all set up for her to be the bad guy now. It's crazy.
Did book 2 have a twist?
I can't remember.
Oh, I guess it was just Lockwood showing them the room. Okay. So not so much a twist as like a, oh, I want to know more.
Oh, right. Yeah, they walk in there and it's like the ghost, light and everything. And then it's like, what is this? And then, we just stop. We talked about it a little bit, but we didn't explicitly talk about the whole deaths in life and life's in death thing.
Oh, that's fair. You're right. That Lucy mentions to Skull that she finally understands what he's been trying to tell her, that as much as there are ghosts here in the real world, there have been living people visiting
on the other side. So even the creeping shadow was not really the first thing, because he told her that way back at the end of the first book in the original twist.
The original twist. Yeah. So that's interesting. But that does seem to be like the end of Skull's information.
Mm-hmm.
Like he knew it was happening, but he doesn't know
who or why or how or any of that.
So I guess we'll see more in book 5. Maybe. Who knows?
Indeed. So this is your favorite book.
Yes.
Is it because of this big twist at the end, or is it like what is it?
I like the twist. It's just my type of story. It's just exactly, the broken apart team coming back together. Like, as I said, when we were reading book 3, I hated all the non-communication that was happening, all the just simmering anger that was happening. I hate that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying I hate the book. I'm just saying that's not my preferred type of story to read, when people are just not talking for little to no reason. And this book is all about how they come back together, and that I really like. And I loved the journey to the other side. I love how that comes about, how it feels organic, right? Like it truly does not feel like Stroud was like, how do I make this happen? You know what I mean? Even though that is technically what it is. And the journey on the other side it's very, like I said when we were reading it, it's such a short part of the book, but it feels like such a big part of the book.
Oh yeah, it really stands out.
Yeah, it really
changes everything.
It's really well written, and it's visually it's very cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that a lot. And I just like all the character relationships in this book. I think shows all of the relationships really well and how far they've all come.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great evolution of everybody's character, where they're going. But then it's also, like I talked about before, plays with a lot of different genres and uses them as a structure for Lucy's personal journey in a way that I think is super smart and interesting.
Yeah.
So different parts are detective stories, and then thrillers, and then heist, and then it's just brilliantly done, I think.
And if you read a lot of young adult fiction, most of them are trilogies. And there's something called second book syndrome, which basically means all the characters who you fell in love with, like the team in book 1, in book 2, they don't interact. You know, one character's over here, one character's over there. They barely talk to each other. Maybe they don't talk to each other at all. And it's what I loved about the first book was the team, the group. Why is this like this? And
right. Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah. And sometimes it's genuinely bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels very forced, and like you're obviously just not wanting them to have answers for a book. And it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because you need to write 3 books.
Yeah. And so I think Stroud circumvents that, not just because this isn't a trilogy, because you could say that book 3 is kind of the one with the book 2 syndrome, because it's the middle and there is that lack of communication, but you still get to see the team be together and work together.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, even though Lucy is on her own at the beginning, the team does come back together pretty quickly.
And in such a big, satisfying way.
Yeah.
For most of the book, too.
Yeah. So it never feels like, why have you ruined what people liked about the books?
Yeah. And it feels like the team really evolves, like I talked about before, where it doesn't feel like these kind of episodic, each book is reset, we're just going back to each episode of Scooby-Doo is just nothing happened before, it's just everybody's character is exactly the same. It's not like that. You know, the introduction of Holly, the acceptance of Holly, and by the end of the book, and then into this book, and the way Kip's evolves from the first book to this book, it's all very earned and very like serialized in a satisfying way.
Kip's especially, man. I remember, I've talked about this in a much, much earlier episode also, but I remember seeing a post on, I think, Tumblr talking about how Kip's joined the team, and I was on like book 1 at the time, and I was like, no, how? What? That doesn't make any sense. But by the time it happens, it's so satisfying and it makes sense, and it was set up so well.
I really think that moment of Fitz picking on him and telling him like your life is destroyed is also like really helps us to care about him and to feel good about Lockwood being like, no, you're one of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's just that immediate just feeling of justice against what is like clearly unjust punishment against him. Yeah. Kip's is a pretty impressive arc for a character to go down.
So yeah, I just love a good team.
Yep. And I think this really gets the whole thing nicely set up for the next book, where the team, like, we've chosen each other. Friendship is magic. Yeah. And now we're gonna like fully arm our friendship and go into the enemy's stronghold and do business.
I love that about book 5 also, that he doesn't bring in some interpersonal drama to drive a wedge. Like, he's just like, the story is the drama, not the character. The characters have worked out their shit. There's no backpedaling. I feel like that's pretty rare.
Yeah, I agree.
And for everybody,
it's very satisfying.
Everybody who's going to reread book 5 with us in the new year, I would like to point out that there's nothing in book 5 that says Lucy and Lockwood are not making out. They could. It's just off page.
It could be happening.
There's nothing that explicitly denies it.
Do you have a favorite joke for this part 6?
No, all the jokes in these last chapters were actually really bad and fat shaming. So I hated them all.
I have one. It's not fat shaming. It's a kind of like George makes the joke. I thought it was pretty funny.
Okay.
When Barnes shows up, he cleverly gets rid of the Skinner kid, Danny Skinner.
Right.
Because he's like, he's going to eavesdrop on me. And he's like, go find some sandwiches for me and my officers. And he's like, sir, yes, sir. They'll be the best you ever tasted, sir. And he runs into the house, and George is like, the wrapper will be the only edible part. You can take it from me. I thought that was pretty funny.
I see where you're coming from, but just because it's George that says it, it still feels like a fat joke.
A fat joke? Yeah, I guess that's true. I just like that he's making fun of their food. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
because they made fun of their food from Go.
Yeah,
so
they do not
I like that
the
he
food
doesn't let up.
Listen.
Yeah, but I think that is fair. You're right. That George saying it does make it into that.
Maybe if all the other fat jokes around George didn't exist, it would be better. But they do, especially in these last 2 chapters.
Yeah, his poor bacon sandwich. Even.
Oh man, as soon as we stop recording, I'm gonna go make some bacon. Great.
So punk rock, it feels to me like we all vote yes. We're unanimous to destroy the Fitz agency, right?
I agree with you, but just to play devil's advocate, Barnes kind of had his moment.
It's true. Yeah.
With saying no. We're not shut up, basically, is what he said.
But he's the rules guy, and he was like, don't follow the rules in this case.
Yeah. I do think the proper punk rock moment is the team being like, no, we're going to get to the bottom of this no matter what the most powerful person in the country says.
Yeah.
But I appreciate Barnes.
It's true. I think in making that connection is really important for Barnes's journey, if you could call it that, in the next book. I don't know. He continues to evolve too. He's not just the same guy. He has a little
bit there, which is nice. It's nice to see, because we're adults, so it's nice to see that we can change.
I mean, we can't. That's why it's fiction and a fantasy.
Right,
but,
of course. I'm so sorry.
We're stuck.
We are so stuck. But I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you want to reach out to the show, you can do so on Twitter at Lockwood Podcast. And I'm just going to mention that I've started kind of using Blue Sky the way that I used to use Twitter back in 2011. So if you're over there also, you can follow me. I'm at Inferior Caitlin, as per usual. It's a little Dragon Age heavy at the moment, but it'll go back to books at some point, probably.
Probably. You can send your emails to contact@hollowgroundmedia.com. Visit the contact page down at the bottom of hollowgroundmedia.com and fill out the form.
And remember to eat your bacon sandwich before evil henchmen can steal it from you.
That bastard.
That rat bastard.